Welcome to this short retrospective on Might and Magic Book 1. It's been almost 40 years since Jon Van Caneghem released it. Little did he know it would be the first in a long series that would captivate gamers for nearly 3 decades. It would start a franchise that helped define the RPG genre throughout the late 80s and 90s. Its spin-off series, Heroes of Might and Magic, would achieve equal popularity. There was a time in the 90s where you couldn't walk into a computer store without seeing shelves lined with big box Might and Magic titles. For me, Might and Magic 6 was my first introduction to RPGs in the late 90s. But it's time to take a long look back at where it all started in 1986. Welcome to the land of Varn. Yeah. Being a game from 1986 means you have to use your imagination when it comes to exploring the game world. The limited graphics of the time can only do so much. However, a large colour map included with the game goes a long way to whetting your appetite for exploration. Deserts, forests, tundra, swamps and volcanic islands are just waiting to be explored. Not forgetting the 5 unique towns and a myriad of dungeons, this was a big game for its time, and ambitious by the standards of 1986. Although all is not what it seems from first looks at the map, this fantasy land of Varn is in reality a spaceship.
You'd swear you're on the surface of a planet.
With a number of science fiction elements revealed as you progress through the game. While the game is light on text, it still manages to lay down a solid foundation of lore that is expanded on over future titles. The world is large, split up into 16 by 16 tile maps. The overworld consists of 20 regions, with a whole bunch of towns, castles, caves and dungeons to enter and explore, for a total of 55 maps. The maps are maze-like, and drawing those maps was essential to staying sane and making progress throughout the game. Although drawing your own maps was all part of the fun back in the day, complete maps were available in the separately available hint book. Modern online resources also go a long way to making the game more accessible to modern gamers. There wasn't a lot of distractions in 1986, it was a far more relaxed time. Taking a quick look at the manual, we can see it's filled with charming sketches and drawings that went a long way to giving the game a greater sense of personality. And the manual was essential if you wanted to hit the ground running. Important information on character creation, stats, spells, and drawing your own maps was all included. Might and Magic, like many of its contemporaries, still had one foot firmly planted in its tabletop RPG roots. Taking notes and drawing maps would be essential to making progress in the game. It's fair to say that by today's standards, Might and Magic probably has more in common with a tabletop RPG than it does a modern CRPG. The spell list is extensive, with separate spells for clerics and sorcerers. Page after page of detailed information would be essential for understanding what spell does what, and the handy spell reference guide at the back of the manual was invaluable once you started playing. Your party consisted of 6 characters, and there are 6 classes: knights, paladins, clerics, archers, robbers, and sorcerers. A well-balanced starting party with fairly good stats is already available when you start, but you can create your own characters and roll their stats if you prefer. Characters had 7 stats, although some stats were only important for specific classes. Intellect influences sorcerers, and is therefore only of use to the sorcerer and archer class, who both can cast sorcery spells. Might was important for physical damage, done in battle, and is therefore important for any frontline characters, but particularly the knight and paladin. Personality affects cleric spells, and is therefore most important for paladins and clerics. Endurance was important for all classes, and affects how many hit points a character gains when they level up. Speed is also important for all classes, and it affected armor class and the order of combat. Accuracy affects the ability for your characters to land hits, and it was of particular importance to archers and characters that planned to use ranged weapons. Luck was useful for disarming traps and safely opening loot. It was a good idea to have at least one character that was going to fulfill this role, usually the robber. So it's time to venture forth. We start in the town of Scorpigal, fresh-faced and with barely a wooden club to our name. Equipping what basic weapons you do have should be your first move. Then we take our first tentative steps out of the inn and immediately into danger. Random encounters, although uncommon, can happen almost anywhere, and depending on the enemies that spawn, it could be an immediate party wipe. You'll want to slowly map out the town, or cheat with someone else's map, and find some fixed encounters you can farm. Fixed encounters exist throughout every map in the game. Win your first battle and hightail it back to the inn to save your progress. Rinse and repeat until you've got enough XP to level up at the trainer. Decent equipment will slowly drop after fights, and buying gear from the blacksmith is rarely necessary, but also an option. Resting will consume food and heal your party back to full health, including any unconscious characters. Although any dead or poisoned party members will need to be revived at the temple initially before you can unlock more powerful cleric spells. This is costly, and for the first few levels you're better off reloading than spending your precious gold at the temple. Once you've leveled up a couple of times, it will be time to venture down into the town's dungeon. Here you'll eventually find an NPC that will start you off on the main quest. There are a variety of main and side quests available throughout the game. Keep in mind the maps are in of themselves puzzles. Secret walls are everywhere and can lead to useful portals, encounters, or NPCs. Once you've mastered the first dungeon, you'll be well prepared for the outside world where your true adventure awaits. Combat is turn-based, which gives you time to consider each party member's next move. You can attack, cast spells, use items, or attempt to retreat. Useful if you find yourself in a hopeless battle and don't want to risk losing items and XP since your last save at the inn. After each battle, you can search the area for loot, which is almost always trapped, so using your robber to disarm the trap is essential. Traps on loot can be deadly, so resting before you open the loot is advised. It's not uncommon for trapped chests of loot to wipe a weakened party. The combat screen for the DOS version is basic, and there's often not enough information on this single screen to easily be able to tell how well you're doing or how damaged your party members are. This was fixed in other ports of the game, which give far more information on the combat screen. By today's standards, there's no getting around the fact that Might and Magic, as it was initially released on the Apple II and MS-DOS, is a difficult game to get into. Awkward menus, almost non-existent graphics and limited sounds can make it a chore to play. However, a variety of later ports expanded on the graphics and sound effects and make for a far more accessible experience today. And so there's never been a better or easier way to give Might and Magic a go. The NES version can be easily run through an emulator such as RetroArch. It's far more accessible than the DOS version, but the menus are still cumbersome to navigate. The fully reworked 8-bit graphics are a blessing though, and improved sprites for battles help create much needed visual representation of what you're up against. Sounds are also vastly improved, with background music throughout the game. However, some of the game mechanics have been simplified to make the experience console friendly. You can't make your own characters, for example, and the difficulty is reduced. The Japanese version for the PC Engine in 1992 probably boasts the best graphics by far, with a fully animated opening scene and impressive CD quality sounds for the time. Voice acting was also included, albeit in Japanese. However, this is something no other port received. This version of the game is now playable with English text after a fan translation was released last year. Cutscenes throughout the game help to enhance the narrative, and they are enjoyable even if you can't speak Japanese. The interface is also streamlined and more user-friendly than the DOS version. It's probably fair to say it's the most polished of all the versions of Might and Magic 1. The 1987 Macintosh version, not to be confused with the original Apple II version, is my personal favourite and my recommendation to anyone who plans to attempt to play the game for any substantial amount of time. While the monochrome graphics and basic sounds might put some people off, it has by far the most user-friendly interface. You can easily see all your character's HP and magic points on one screen. Managing equipment and casting spells is a breeze with the mouse support. The quick fight option also makes grinding easier fights a breeze. An honourable mention should also be given to an enhanced version of the DOS port via the Scum VM emulator. While under the hood it is the same DOS version, the user interface has been replaced with the one from Might and Magic 3. This is a great way to play the DOS version of the game if you can't get over the user interface. But it is occasionally buggy and I've had it crash on me fairly frequently. Still, it's one to keep your eye on for the future. And there you have it, the beginning of a legendary franchise. This game may have been released in 1986, but its blend of fantasy and sci-fi, combined with deep exploration and challenging combat, laid the groundwork for a franchise that would captivate players for decades. It's a testament to the creativity and vision of its creator, Jon Van Caneghem, and a reminder of how far RPGs have come since those early days. Whether you're a long-time fan or just discovering the series for the first time, Might and Magic 1 is a piece of gaming history worth revisiting. Thanks for joining me on this retrospective. If you would like to see more videos on retro CRPGs, subscribe and share your own memories of the game in the comments below. Until next time, take care.